Extroverts who ask others why are you so quiet, what kind of response are you looking for? I'm the quiet one and have asked my extrovert friend about this. For her, it's her anxiety telling her that I'm not taking because I'm mad at her. She is very uncomfortable with silence. We've both gotten better at being what the other needs in this regard. We have mutual friend who is also an introvert and we can sit and read for an afternoon and have a lovely time together while the extrovert anxiously eyes us lol. Another question for extroverts. Do you ever find it weird that someone is quiet? Whenever I'm asked why I'm quiet, I get the feeling that the other person thinks I'm weird for being silent and observing. I find it hard to believe that it's for any other reason. I was raised by librarians. One of my favorite surgeons is very quiet. Story told about him by another surgeon when he was a resident. Resident kept trying to ask about his kids, his holidays, making chit chat. Surgeon says, I'm comfortable with uncomfortable silences. Apostrophe. End of conversation. One of my favorite coworkers was a guy that was equally comfortable sitting the next desk over in total silence for 4 to 6 hours at a time on the nights we worked together. It was so nice going in knowing I wouldn't have to spend 15 minutes every hour or two trying to make small talk. Sad day when he left. I hope it wasn't because I asked him if he wanted anything from the snack rack that one time. One of my now close friends is very quiet and introverted. For years, I thought he didn't like me at all. Eventually I figured out how to communicate with him. As someone who actually thinks before he speaks, which is surprisingly rare. Like you would ask a question and he wouldn't answer, so I would assume he was ignoring me out of dislike, when in all actuality, he thinks deeply about things before giving an opinion, so you may wait a few minutes in silence before he responds. Once I figured this out, we started to have a true friendship. I'm an extrovert who has recently taught himself to listen more than speak. I'm a contractor and I just knew that I had a tendency to dominate conversation and had to make the conscious effort to shut the duck up and listen to my customers. It has affected my entire life in a positive way. I hate when they follow it up with a command to smile. Why are you quiet? Smile. Apostrophe. A witch stole the top 15 decibels of my voice. If you can retrieve them, I'll give you a reward. Apostrophe. Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. Why are you so loud? I think there is a common misconception that introverts are rude and standoffish. It's hard for some people to be social, and that's perfectly okay. Maybe just a smile and a friendly I don't know. That's just the way I should work. I was in a long relationship with someone who could not stand silence and would never stop talking. This resulted in a complete breakdown of communication because what was being said was always filler and never quality. I speak when there's something to say and expect to be listened to. Some people speak as a performance and don't understand why others don't perform the same way. When there's constant talking, information is not exchanged because talking just becomes constant empty noise. Introversion and extroversion are not the same as noisy and quiet. It is entirely possible to be a quiet extrovert. I just came to say, please stop asking people why they are quiet. They are shy or nervous, or worried or something. Ask them a question they can answer, like what do you think, or did you see? Question mark. But enough about me. How are you finding? Question mark. What did you do at the weekend? What have you planned for this weekend? How's your dog doing? You made a mistake asking Reddit this question. We're all introverts. I had an uncle who was like that. One day he went to a barber shop with my dad and when the barber asked my uncle how he wanted his haircut, he replied in absolute silence. Apostrophe. Just trying to make sure we didn't do something to offend. Cause fellow extroverts get quiet when they're mad/frustrated. There seems to be a common misconception that extroversion equals social and introversion equals quiet. Introversion and extroversion, at least in a psychological sense, is more about whether engaging with your external environment decreases or increases your energy respectively. Hence you can have some very social, bubbly people that are introverts. However, after a period of socializing, those introverts will want to recluse away from those environments to recover energy. Also note that it is generally argued to be a sliding scale, so it is likely everyone can kind of empathize to some extent with being an introvert and being an extrovert. I would even personally argue that anecdotally the trait can be quite temperamental. A lot of people ask me, why don't you just talk to people? What could go wrong? And I guess that's true, but I'm always afraid I'm going to do something weird and duck up and look really stupid, and it happens a lot to be so. That's why for me this is going to be buried, but whatever. People should stop blaming extroverts as a whole for the tactlessness of some people. It's not an extrovert thing. It's not an introvert thing. It's a thing of indiscreet people in general. That's it. From a fellow introvert. Frankly, I think there are various reasons. My parents ask that of my daughter, misguidedly but with good intentions, to encourage her to talk. As another poster noted, they would be better off asking something specific about school or something. Someone once said to me, "You started singing in front of the whole group today, but you're always so quiet." Me, yep. Quiet doesn't equal shy. Common misconception. Finally, some extroverts just don't understand introverts. I've had a couple of instances where people actually got angry at it, even close to fisticuffs. I think they see it as a threat or a slight of some kind. Maybe because they can't read the person, which makes them uncertain. In any situation, it's a terrible question to ask. People ask that because they think that if someone's quiet it means they don't like them. It's insecurity. They're fishing for the quiet person to soothe their ego by making an excuse, or possibly coping with their own discomfort by spreading it around. Asking someone "Why are you so quiet?" is a surefire way to make them uncomfortable. Close bracket. I think extroverts often mistake silence as a sign someone isn't having a good time. Some people who ask it are just being assholes. But I think often it can also just be reassuring that the other person isn't miserable. As an extrovert, I'm quiet when I feel uncomfortable or don't want to be in a particular setting. So if I see someone else acting so, I usually ask a brief "You okay?" or "Having a good time?" which I think is a bit more polite. Honestly, in looking for any type of response, are you having a bad day? Do you want me to shut up? Do you just have nothing to add? Do you hate me? Question mark? Question mark? As an extrovert, I'm just looking to get a full understanding of the situation, so I don't ducking embarrass myself. My husband is very introverted, and I understand his cues completely, so it's not an issue. Introverts are just so mysterious. Tell me everything! Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. But also I respect the fact that you don't want to. People do this shit to me all the time. Like you're awful quiet, or you don't say much. Like no ducking shit. What do you expect me to say? Do you just feel the need to berate me for not verbally engaging you constantly? Extrovert here. I find that question to be highly rude. In a situation as such I would say something like "You doing alright?" comma, or "How are things?" comma, or try to spark general conversation and pick up on signs. If someone doesn't feel like talking they will let you know with tone and body language. I'm an extrovert with anxiety. It is so much fun. I ask that question cause I'm terrified that I'm annoying the person. They are not interested, or they just don't like me. We ask why you are quiet cause to us, when we are quiet we aren't involved, and can make us feel bored and left out. It is not, at least in my case, a shaming function to get you to talk more. It more we might be interested in what you have to say and want to make sure you are having fun. It could be worded better, but then sometimes you sound like a boss with phrases like "Jim, what are your thoughts on the matter?" or "Becca seems quiet, I'm wondering what your opinion is." Some of the best answers I've heard that at least helps my anxiety have been "I'm just enjoying listening to the conversation," or "I'm not familiar with this topic, but I'm glad to be learning new items." If you want us to talk, find out what we're interested in, and we'll talk for hours. Trying to get us to talk by shaming us for not talking. Yeah, that's not going to work at all. Yep, every time someone asks me that, it's someone who's never actually attempted to have a conversation with me. Like maybe we could have been friends. But now that you're putting me on the spot like that, you've already got a point in the I don't like you category. Because I am. If you knew me, this would not be a question. Depends on how well I know them and what we are doing. Most of the time I just am looking to be sure they are doing okay, or in the case of a party or something aren't bored, but just pretending to be fine / staying for appearances. If we could just set up a code word or even look for that check-in, that would be good enough. I just want to be for real. For real is sure they are okay. I have never had an extrovert ask me why I'm so quiet. I'm not sure they notice. It's a lack of understanding on both sides. Extroverts being talkative and trying to engage others in conversation is just who they are. Introverts being reserved or content in silence is just who they are. When the extrovert engages, the introvert sees them as annoying. Particular when a question like "why are you so quiet?" comes out. The introvert is minding their own business and would prefer others to do the same. Or maybe they just don't care much for idle / non-relevant conversation. The extrovert sees the introvert as possibly trying to deal with something and wants to either figure out why or to just be friendly and help. If the introvert clams up, the extrovert concludes they're cold and weird. Neither side is more correct than the other, but I think both of them are wrong about each other much of the time. My wife's brother and I are the same, and have watched entire football games without saying a word. I wish. I was watching a show with my mum last night that neither of us had seen before, and she said during it that she's sorry she can't turn her chair to face both me and the TV so we can converse as her neck was sore from earlier in the day. I was like, please don't. I'm trying to watch the show. Why would we converse? As someone who's had social anxiety my whole life and was effectively mute outside my home until age 12, people who ask this question are my least favorite type of person. I don't even ask anymore because I understand that conversation just isn't for everyone, even if it is just to pass the time at work. This thread is about as askreddit as it gets. Everyone is assuming you'd only ask an introvert this question. What if your friend is extroverted and being oddly quiet? For me that raises concern. So I'll ask the question. I'd like to know if something is troubling you, or maybe just feel like keeping to yourself. It's not to put you on center stage or a attack. Also, I've had introverted people ask me the question, why are you so quiet? It's not like only one type of person asks this question. It's often, and believe it or not, a question of concern, just responding kind. I'm shy. I'm not feeling it. I like to listen, etc. Introvert / extrovert thing is always odd to me. I'm not quiet, that's just the way I am. There was a time when I was young. The skies were bluer, the grass was greener, the oceans were filled with fish and not plastic. The forest did not burn, and the food and water did not poison. Why am I so quiet, you ask? When I was young, a cat got my tongue. I'm by no means an extrovert, but when I ask that it usually means, are you okay? You're honestly a shitty type of person if you ask this question. It only makes the person uncomfortable and a surefire way to get them to not talk to you. As an introvert, I'm embarrassed by all the shitty, whiny introverts who responded to this question. They accuse extroverts of being malicious or completely unaware of the complexes and insecurities of others, all the while seemingly oblivious that complexes and insecurities can drive people to do things like ask this question as a defense mechanism. You can't demand understanding and accommodation if you're not willing to try to understand why others do what they do, just because you don't like what they do. I knew a guy in college who was very domineering in conversation, and he seemed like just a shitty dude by the way he engaged others, and seemed to crave this sort of interaction even from people who didn't want it, like quiet people, until I learned that he grew up with a very shitty home life and found that he spent his time off campus taking care of his shitty parents. which is why he was never able to make friends, and why he developed adverse social defense mechanisms. It helps to, as John Green would say, imagine people complexly, even people who annoy you. I have a stutter which I think might contribute to my introvertness. Then one day at work I was asked by a very chatty coworker, why don't you talk? I'm starting to think you don't like us. Then I explained that I'm just a bit shy. And before I could explain about the stutter she cut in with, well, you better get over it. But the thing is, I cold said the same thing to her because she would always talk to our other coworkers but not me. So I cold have easily said, why don't you talk to me? I'm starting to think you don't like me. I think she realized that she was being rude because she never asked me that again, and she began talking to me regularly. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.